If history teaches us anything, it's that no empire lasts forever. But while they reigned, some of them changed the world so drastically that we are still feeling the aftershocks today. Let me prove it. We begin with the Mongol Empire because no other force in history expanded as fast or killed as many. Genghis Khan united warring tribes and turned them into the deadliest military machine the world had ever seen. By the 13th century, the Mongols had conquered more land than the Roman Empire at its peak. In fact, twice as much in half the time. They controlled from China to Eastern Europe, used biological warfare during sieges, and wiped out entire cities like Nishapur, where allegedly over 1.7 million people were killed in revenge. Their cavalry could ride for days without stopping, and they used silk under their armor to prevent arrow wounds from becoming fatal. At their height, they ruled over 100 million people and reshaped trade routes forever. Then there is the Ottoman Empire, which used to be the bridge between East and West for over 600 years. At its peak under Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottomans ruled most of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe. They took Constantinople in 1453, ending the Byzantine Empire with massive cannons that fired 600-pound stone balls. Their legal system, architectural innovation, and military might made them a superpower. But internal corruption, European industrialization, and World War I collapsed them. Still, they left behind Istanbul, Topkapi Palace, and the story of an empire that forever changed the image of Islam around the world. Now let's talk about Rome, because how can you ignore an empire that started as a swampy city and ended up ruling most of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East? At its height in the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire controlled over 5 million square kilometers and governed around 20% of the world's population. They built 250,000 miles of roads, some still in use today. Not only that, they created the legal and architectural blueprint that Europe still follows. But do you know what was the wildest part? The gladiator fights were not even the most brutal entertainment. It was the naval battles that were recreated in flooded arenas. But their fall was just as dramatic. Economic collapse, barbarian invasions, and endless civil wars tore the empire apart from the inside. From Rome we move to its eastern sibling, the Byzantine Empire, which outlived its western half by 1,000 years. While the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD, the Byzantines kept going until 1453, speaking Greek, defending Christianity, and fending off invaders from Persians to Crusaders. Their secret weapon was the Greek fire, which was a terrifying chemical that burned even on water and could not be extinguished. They preserved ancient knowledge, built the Hagia Sophia, and survived centuries of war, but eventually they were swallowed by the rising Ottomans. Now shift to the British Empire, the empire where the sun never set, quite literally. At its peak around 1920, Britain controlled nearly 25% of the Earth's land area and ruled over 1 in every 4 humans. The British built railroads across India, restructured African borders, and spread English across the world. But this came at a price: famine in Bengal, violent uprisings, and the brutal cost of empire. Then, World War II happened, and Britain lost most of its holdings in a wave of decolonization. Let's move some centuries back and talk about the Abbasid Caliphate. It was a golden age of science, art, and learning. From their capital in Baghdad, the Abbasids ruled over most of the Islamic world, starting in 750 AD. They created Bait al-Hikmah, which is the House of Wisdom, where scholars translated ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian texts. You won't believe that these were the ones who invented algebra, refined medical science, and established libraries that made medieval Europe look illiterate. But then Mongol invasions eventually destroyed Baghdad in 1258, and the heart of Islamic learning was reduced to ashes. From the Islamic world to Imperial China, the Qing dynasty was the last and perhaps most underestimated Chinese dynasty. It was ruled by the Manchus. The king controlled over 13 million square kilometers, making it one of the largest empires in history. But Western powers, opium wars, and internal rebellion finally brought the king down in 1912. This ended thousands of years of imperial rule in China. Back in Europe, the Russian Empire grew from a cold kingdom into one of the world's largest land empires by the 19th century. Under rulers like Peter the Great and Catherine the Great, Russia absorbed parts of Poland, the Caucasus, Central Asia, and Alaska. They pushed east across Siberia all the way to the Pacific. The Romanovs ruled for 300 years, but internal revolt and World War I pressure started the 1917 revolution. The Tsar and his family were executed, and the empire became the USSR. Speaking of imperial might, the Spanish Empire deserves its place on this list. After Columbus's voyage in 1492, Spain launched an age of conquest, colonizing massive parts of the Americas, parts of Africa and Asia. The Spanish brought Christianity, gunpowder, and disease, decimating native populations. They also looted enough gold and silver from the New World to cause global inflation. At its height, Spain ruled over 7.5 million square miles, but it was the wars with Britain and resistance movements that eventually broke the empire apart. And finally, in the end, we have the Aztecs, a terrifying and fascinating civilization that ruled central Mexico before the Spanish arrived. The Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, had floating gardens, aqueducts, and clean streets. You'll be surprised to know that these were more advanced than most European cities at the time, but they were known for ritual sacrifice. These included thousands of victims, hearts ripped out atop temples, and blood poured down steps as offerings to the gods. Like all the others, this empire also crumbled under the weight of time. Now tell me, which empire do you think was the greatest of them all? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe for more crazy stories. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!